All right. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants event. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I'll be your host for today. If you've tuned in already this month, you know that our theme is kind of a bit of a mixture. We're visiting the Arctic, so we've got a real Arctic theme. We'll be talking to some polar bear scientists later this week and next week, but we're also focusing on big cats. So we do this every December with scientists and explorers, places like India and Africa and South America, even North America, sharing their big cat stories and some of the threats that big cats are facing. So continuing on today, I'm really excited to have Andrew Stein joining us today. He has over 15 years experience working on human carnivore conflict throughout East and Southern Africa. His previous work included studies of African wild dogs and lions in Kenya, leopards in the farmlands of South Africa, and the Waterberg region of Namibia. In 2015, he founded the CLAWS Conservancy, so Communities Living Among Wildlife Sustainably. This is a nonprofit organization that's providing innovative approaches to promote human-wildlife coexistence. So Andrew's also an assistant professor at Landmark College in Vermont. I'm going to bring Andrew in live with us today. Hey, Andrew, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you, Joe?
Good, good. Always great to see you. Always great to share the awesome research that you're doing. So we're excited to dive into your big cat world for a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, I've done this a few times already over the years, and I always enjoy it. So I'm excited.
All right, awesome. We've got classrooms tuning in. I see lots of comments coming in via YouTube already. We've got some live camera classrooms with us today. So I'm going to let you take over for a little bit, and then we're going to hit you with some questions.
Perfect. So what I'm going to do is share my screen, and then we'll go through a short presentation, and then I'll take questions. So let me get to it. All right. So, of course, today, through the Explorer Classroom, I want to talk about saving lions in Africa. Now, as Joe mentioned, I'm the founder of the CLAWS Conservancy. I'm an associate professor at Landmark College, and I'm a National Geographic explorer. Now, I grew up in a city in Worcester, Massachusetts, in the center of New England. So how did I get from a classroom much like this to Africa, where I started doing my field research? When I was around your age, I was watching documentaries on television, learning about animals in far-off exotic places, and it really captured my imagination. The idea of visiting such a place or even working in Africa, I couldn't even imagine it. That was something for someone else, and I didn't think that I was going to be able to do it. But I was able to, and I want to tell you a little bit about how that happened. So when I was about 13 years old, I started volunteering at a local zoo, and then I went to college for zoology. Zoology is the study of animals. And then I did a study abroad program in college to Kenya. Now, this was my first time to Africa, and I couldn't believe how lucky I was to be there and to spend 4 months and study wild animals with local professors and meet wildlife biologists that were doing field work in various parts of the country. After this trip, I realized I could actually do this. This is something that I could achieve, and I became really excited about returning to Africa. So over the course of several years, I did projects in South Africa on leopards. Then I returned to Kenya for a year, working on African wild dogs and lions. Then I got a Fulbright scholarship to work on leopards on the farmlands in Namibia in Southern Africa. And then I started working in Botswana, running a research station in the Okavango Delta. And now I've started my own project on lions in the Okavango. Now, during my time in the field, I was lucky enough to meet a lot of really interesting people, people that were living on the landscape with these wild animals. in the States, I always thought of lions and big animals as animals that lived in the zoo, and they live separate from us. But as you go to Africa and you talk to people in these communities, you realize that lions and leopards and elephants move around their houses at night all the time. And so there are certain things that they need to do to protect themselves or protect their sheep or goats or their crops from animals that eat their food. So here I am in the front on the left, and in the middle in the back was my boss, this English woman, Rosie Woodruff. And we were working with a variety of communities in Kenya, the Maasai, the Samburu, the Pokot, and the Turkana tribes. These are the Samburu in northern Kenya. In Namibia, I worked with a lot of different tribes, the Damaras, the Hereros, Oshivambos. This is several Oshivambo women that are doing a celebratory dance at a wedding that I attended. I also worked with a variety of game scouts and game guards and anti-poaching teams to try to collect information about wildlife in the area when they were on patrol. So I had the opportunity to work with them and train them and learn about their experience in the field. Now I primarily focus on lions. Now, lions are in big trouble. In the last 25 years, we've lost half of the lions in Africa because of habitat loss and conflict with people. So therefore, we need to come up with really innovative solutions to try to address the problem so that lions remain and live in Africa. So part of our work is to dart lions. This lion is sleeping, and we collect samples, blood samples, to see if the lion is healthy. And then we take measurements, and then we put a tracking collar on that lion so that we can see where the lion goes. Especially if it's getting close to the village, we can send warnings to people to make sure that they stay safe. While in Africa, this was my house. When I did my postdoc, I lived in this tent for 3 years. Inside the tent, it was nice, actually. There was a bed on a wooden bed frame, and there was a little dresser. And at night, we would have lots of animals come around. Sometimes even elephants would rub against the tent while I was sleeping. This was our kitchen. So you can see the tea kettles there, but we would have a cook that would make our meals, and then we would have our lunch around the table here. And you can see it's open so that animals can come in sometimes. Occasionally, we would have baboons come into the kitchen and try to steal some of our food. This was our shower. So, of course, it's an open shower, so animals, again, could come in and out. At night, sometimes after a long day of field work, I would walk to the shower with my flashlight, walk into the shower, and then just as I was arriving, a hyena would run out. Or some of my colleagues would shower, and just outside of these dry reeds, there'd be a pool of water, and they would have an elephant or lions drinking the water that was coming out of the shower on the other side. This is what the toilet looked like. So clearly it was not a flushing toilet, it was just a hole in the ground. But you can see that there's a piece of the seat missing, and that was probably from hyenas. We get lots of visitors to camp. This was one of the famous elephants that was named Ahmed, who came into camp and would just walk around and relax. You might be able to see from his right ear, there's a bit of a rip in the ear, probably from some thorns from a branch. So we knew who he was. Oftentimes, elephants that would come into camp were very dangerous. So if we saw them, we would stay put and not make too much noise or move around too much because the elephants might get upset. With Ahmed, we could actually walk around and walk to the kitchen and take photos of him. And he actually was pretty relaxed. As you can see, this is me with him on the other side of camp. We also had other animals come in. These are 3 different leopards, females, that came to our bird bath to drink during the dry season. And we could tell that they were different because each leopard has a unique spot pattern like a fingerprint. So you can look at the spots and line them up and see that they're actually different animals. We also had snakes. This is a rock python that was crossing the road, and I'm picking him up so that I can remove him from the road. We also had poisonous snakes in camp, things like spitting cobras, puff adders, stiletto snakes. So you always had to be really careful and be aware of your surroundings. Not only did the baboons get into our food, but we also had vervet monkeys. And vervet monkeys would often wait until we were all out in the field tracking animals, and then they would come in and try to find some food. This monkey found some gum that was in my tent. Now, after we put up the tracking collars, we have to go and find the animals. These collars use a GPS, sort of like what your parents might use in the car to get directions. We can actually use that information on our computer to find animals. But we don't have internet connection in most places around, so we use radio tracking equipment where we can listen to a signal coming from the collar, and as we get closer, the signal gets louder. Now, while we're driving, of course, we come into all sorts of problems. Here I am changing a flat tire because the thorn went through it. One day I actually had 6 flat tires in the same day. So you can imagine you get very good at changing tires. But also, here in the Okavango Delta, it's a wetland area, so you have to do a lot of river crossings. And sometimes you don't make it. In this case, our vehicle got stuck and we had to pull our way out of the river in order to fix the vehicle and get started with our field work again. But typically, when we go out, we find our study animals. We can radio to the rest of the team, let them know. We write down our data about that pride. So typically, we want to know how many animals are there, how many cubs, whether they're feeding, is anybody missing? Are they growing up really well? Are they in good condition? Have they recently fed? Do they have any injuries? All of these things need to be recorded. And so we try to find the animals on a regular basis so that we know that they're okay over the long term. Now, another nice thing about this, after we collar an animal, we go to the communities nearby where the lions walk around and we ask them to give the lions a name. So that way they can actually feel connected to the lions. Just last week, we had a community name a lioness that we just collared, and they named her Shedipatira. And Shedipatira means the one who belongs to us. So the community actually feels that this lioness is part of their community. Another lioness that we collared several years ago is named Mayenga, and this is a picture of her. You can see her tracking collar around her neck. Mayenga means decorated by the gods. She lives in a very large pride, the largest pride of our study, where there's over 10 animals, including 6 cubs and 4 females. And then there are also 2 males that associate with the pride. Now, looking at this picture, you can see a female with a collar in the back, and you can see several cubs. Now, one of the things that's really interesting about lions is that they raise their cubs together. So the pride is made up of females that are all related. So they can be sisters, or an aunt and a niece, or a mother and a daughter, or a grandmother and a granddaughter, and they all might be having cubs at the same time. Now, these cubs are all different sizes. So the one looking straight at you is smaller than the one to its left and to its right. That shows that there are multiple females having cubs at the same time. And what's really interesting about lions is that they will nurse each other's cubs. So it's not that one female will only nurse her own cubs, but she'll nurse the cubs of her sister or her mother or her aunt or niece. And it's really, really different from all other social animals. Now, another thing about these tracking collars is that they help us provide warnings to people in the village. So there is a program that determines when the lions get within 3 kilometers or 2 miles to the nearest village, and then it will send a text message to all the members of that village to let them know that a lion is nearby. So here we have a villager on his cell phone, and you can see on the right, there's a message, and this is what the messages look like. And you can see lion Mayenga is approaching village Jungwe at a distance of 1 kilometer. So the villagers in these different villages receive these messages, and then they know which lion, how often they're coming, and how far away they are that night. The other thing that we're doing is we hire local people to look after a communal herd of cows. So the cattle come together in one large herd. These herders walk with them during the day. They make sure that they're feeding well, that they are in good condition, that they're having calves, that they're feeding on the grass and not overgrazing, but they're also protecting them against lions and other predators. In fact, in the last 2 years, there have been a couple cases where the cattle walk into a new area. There's a lion nearby that nobody knows about. The lion jumps on a cow, and then the herders run up and make a lot of noise and chase the lion away. And then they can actually treat the injuries to the cow that survives, and the lion must go and get some of its natural food instead of feeding on the cows. And because of that, the villagers are happier to live with lions as long as they're not killing their cows. So what does this mean? Well, in our area, it means that lions are slowly recovering. When we first started our project, there was a lot of conflict and villagers got very angry and started killing lions. But in the last couple of years, that has reduced quite a lot. And so the lions are having cubs, and those cubs are starting to grow, and the prides are starting to build up again. So thank you for your attention. Any of you who are interested, we have a website, we have a page on Facebook, and we also have an Instagram account where we post lots of nice photos of lions and villagers and some of the things that we're doing. We're part of National Geographic's Big Cats Initiative, and we're funded by Lion Recovery Fund, Natural Selection, Great Plains Foundation, the Sacramento Zoo, and Jumbo. So with that, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen.
All right, Andrew.
And we can get to questions.
Good stuff. Thanks so much, Andrew. That was great. I love those tracking collars and with that ability to send out the signals to the cell phones. I think that's just so awesome. Just a way to be aware of where the predators are and avoid some of those conflicts. It's good stuff.
Yeah, we're really excited about that program. We've fully automated it so that we don't have to be involved. The messages go directly, like from a formula in the cloud that sends these messages via satellite straight to people's phones.
All right, very cool. Well, we're going to start a little Q&A action now. So classrooms on YouTube, let's keep the chat just to questions now so I can see them really easily. So I'm looking forward to grabbing some of your questions there. But let's start off with one of our live camera classes. So let's go to Mrs. Foster's group. They're hanging out with us in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Let's bring them in. How are we doing, Mrs. Foster's class?
Good, thank you. Go ahead, Preston.
Do you see much trophy hunting in Botswana, and are they against the law?
Are they against what?
The law.
The law. Oh, okay. So that's a very good question. Trophy hunting was allowed in Botswana for a very long time. In around 2013, they stopped trophy hunting. They didn't allow it for a variety of reasons. There was a lot of pressure on the government from different environmental organizations that were against trophy hunting. Also, some of the trophy hunting companies were doing things that were a little bit unsavory or even illegal as far as against the permits that they received. So they were hunting animals in areas they weren't supposed to, or they were maybe drugging an animal so that it was kind of half asleep and then hunting it. So it wasn't really like fair chase. So after a number of these things were happening, the government decided to close hunting. The new president has decided to open hunting again. And so it is legal. People are able to get hunting permits now for lion, for leopard, for elephants, and other large game animals. The only thing that has stopped it is COVID-19. There's been heavy restrictions on travel in and out of the country. So I don't think hunting has actually happened, even though it's now legal. Oh, I think you're muted.
There we go. We got a great question here via YouTube from Yaya, and she is wondering about the population of lions around your camp. So is it, do you know the population size around the area where you work?
Yes. So around our camp, in our study area, we believe that there's between 40 and 50 lions in about 13 different groups. So the groups vary in size from a couple animals. It might be a female and two cubs, or a pride like the size of Mayengas, where you have like 10 individuals. And then the males are in coalitions and they're moving around. So pride size varies. Oftentimes they stay away from the villages because there's a lot of activity, but then at night they'll come and approach while people are asleep. So yeah, there's a lot of variation, but we believe the population is relatively stable between 40 and 50.
All right, I'm going to bring in Miss Smith here. She's representing her 8th graders virtually. How you doing, Miss Smith?
Hey, good, thanks. How are you?
Good.
Our students have 2 questions, so I'll combine them together. Rishi wants to know at what age you start collaring them, and Dylan wants to know what's the biggest lion you've seen with your own eyes. Like, how much was this cat weighing? How big was it?
Yeah, 2 great questions. Collaring is really tricky business, as you might imagine. You put the collar on too young, and the animal grows, and then it can actually be very restrictive. We also don't put collars on very old animals either, because we don't want to add an extra burden to them. So typically, lions get close to full size around 3 years old. So we do not collar until around 3. And we know their age basically by looking at tooth wear. So when they're darted, we look at their teeth. And if their teeth are really nice and sharp and they're very white, and we look at a ridge along the gum line, like right where the tooth meets the gum, And the older the lion gets, there's this dark yellow band that you can see, and it gets bigger and bigger. So typically, if the size is really good, and the tooth wear is good, then we'll put the collar on. Just another quick side note, when we put the collar on, we usually make sure that we can put 3 fingers between the collar and the neck so that there's a little bit of space that the collar can move and can be adjusted. Obviously, if it's too tight, it's a problem. But if it's too loose, it can be a problem also. Not only can the animal pull it over their head, and then we've wasted time, but sometimes if they're walking through a woodland area and the collar is really loose and they rub against a branch can get stuck and rub on the neck and cause injury too. So we have to consider all of those things. The collars we use actually have a drop-off mechanism. So after 2 years, even if we can't find the animal, there's a pin that pops off and then the collar falls off the animal and then we can retrieve it. And the lion isn't doomed to wear the collar for the rest of its life. For the second question about the biggest lion, we had a lion named Gombo that we darted 4 years ago, and he was massive. Yeah, they can grow to about 500 pounds. So I mean, he was one of the biggest lions I've ever seen, and his paws were almost bigger than my head. I mean, when we had him sleeping, and you can actually just look at him up close. I mean, we were all looking at each other like, this is a massive, massive cat. And he lived quite a long time. He just passed away this last year. We think he was probably 11 or 12 years old, which is quite old for a male. Females can live to like 16 or 17.
All right, we've got another question here I'm going to grab from YouTube. So Ms. Carr's class is joining in with us. And so they're curious about, when you tranquilize a lion, it's probably a little bit tricky. You have to get the dose right. Have you ever had any close calls with them kind of waking up while you're still working?
Yes, more than I'd like to admit. There are so many factors involved in darting an animal. It's not just using the right mixture of anesthetic drugs. You don't know the medical history of the animal. Oftentimes you don't know if they've eaten recently. So if they're on an empty stomach, they're going to react to the drugs differently than if they've just eaten. Like sometimes you can see that they have a big belly or whatever. If it's a female with cubs, sometimes you dart them and they don't want to fall asleep because they have so much adrenaline because they want to protect their cubs. So that can be a challenge because you dart them, you give them a full dose, and then you're wondering, like, why isn't this cat falling asleep the way it's supposed to? Sometimes you dart them and the dart hits and kind of falls out, and you're wondering, did they get a full dose of the drugs so they're going to fully fall asleep or not? Sometimes at night, that's when lions are active, and we will put these speakers up and we'll play these calls of different prey animals, and then the lions come running up because they're looking for a meal, and then you dart them and they think they got stung by something, and then they run away into the darkness, and then you've got a flashlight, you got to find them, and that can be challenging. We had one experience a couple of years ago where we darted this big male lion at night. He takes off. I'm driving. The vet is kind of in the back of the vehicle because he had the dart gun. And so I'm driving it, and we've got a spotlight, and we're looking for this male, and he's kind of off in the distance. And then I drive straight into like an aardvark hole. So the tire like fully fits in this hole, and I'm trying to get out, and the lion gets away, and then, we've lost it. So one of our trackers gets out of the vehicle, the vet gets out of the vehicle, and they're walking in the night with spotlights, looking for areas where the lion probably walked, where like the grass has like been bent in a particular way, and they're following the tracks. It's tall grass, so they can't see actual paw prints. And they're walking and walking, and eventually another vehicle finds the lion fully asleep. So they call us in, and the vet just, instead of getting on the vehicle, walks right up to the lion and through the radio says, "Okay, is this lion definitely asleep?" And the guys in the other car say, "Yes, fully asleep. We drove up. It didn't even react to the sound of the engine of the car." So the vet walks up and he tests the lion by giving it a little tug on the tail. So as he does that, he turns to get his supplies out of the vehicle, and the lion jumps to its feet, looks over, and then starts trying to run away. And the veterinarian was like, I don't know, 3-4 feet away from the lion. So, yeah, I mean, things like that can happen, and you just got to be really, really careful. Oftentimes when the lion is asleep, we try to stay on the backside. So if the lion is sleeping with its legs up like this, we stay behind the lion in case the lion wakes up slightly and like swipes with its paw. But yeah, it happens. You have to be very, very alert all the time. The other thing that I would mention about darting that's tricky, especially with lions, is that because they're social, when you dart one, the other ones are awake and walking around and curious. So you're always alert and walking and looking around to make sure that the other lions don't get too close while you're putting the collar on and taking the measurements and all of that. So there's a lot of things to consider with darting. It's very stressful, and we do our best to keep it as safe as possible. And we've never had any injuries to people or lions so far.
All right. Well, it sounds like the whole process is kind of an adventure. You don't know what's going to happen each time. Keeps you on your toes.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to go to some grade 7s hanging out in Oakville, Ontario. So here in Canada. How are we doing, grade 7s?
There we go. Good.
Good.
All right. Well, we'd love to grab a couple questions if you have some.
All right, we've written some questions in the chat. Oh, Matthew, do you have a question?
No, I'm trading.
Oh, yeah. So we'd like to know how reliable the Wi-Fi is, because living in Canada, we're really not sure about the circumstances or conditions of or availability of Wi-Fi in Africa. So is it reliable? And how did you contact, or how did you stay connected with family and friends from home while you're there if the Wi-Fi wasn't reliable?
That is a great question. And over the years, things have changed a lot. When I did my first project in South Africa in the year 2001, nobody had cell phones. There was no Wi-Fi anywhere. I didn't even have a radio, and I didn't have a vehicle. So I was working on leopards on foot in a camp where for several months I was completely alone. And so it was really challenging. I mean, I had nobody to talk to. I was talking to myself the whole time. Every once in a while I'd go to the rancher's house and he'd let me use his phone, and I would use like a prepaid phone card or something. Now at our field station, we work at a lodge that has Wi-Fi. All of the villages nearby have cell phone towers in them. So you could easily make a phone call home, even though it's a little bit expensive. Or if the Wi-Fi is strong, we could Skype, or I try to Skype with my team like once a week. Oftentimes the Skype goes out, or there are delays, or the call gets dropped or whatever. So we're hoping to kind of get better infrastructure there. But in the towns, there's Wi-Fi. It's usually a little bit slow, but you can check your email, you can talk to people. So it's getting better and better. Every year it gets better and better.
All right. Let's go back to Mrs. Foster's class and give them a follow-up question.
Do lions ever attack the people, or are they more interested in the livestock?
Very good question. Obviously, it's something that's very concerning to us and the villagers, is that lions are big. They're built to kill animals. I mean, that's the only way that they're going to survive, is by killing their prey. In our area, lion attacks on people are extremely rare. In the last, I think, 10 years, there's been 3 cases. In every single case, the person survived, so they weren't killed. But also in every single case, the people were going after the lion to kill it. So maybe the lion killed a couple cows. The people get upset. They come together. They start talking to each other and they say, we have to do something about this. I only have 10 cows. I lost 2 of them to these lions last night. So, how am I going to support my family? They get very upset. And then they get a rifle. And then a couple people start walking and following the tracks of the lion. Now, of course, the lion gets scared. It keeps moving ahead of the people, but the people keep catching up. And then when the lion is cornered, then it will lunge out and will jump and attack somebody. When it has attacked people, usually it causes injuries. Maybe it might bite or scratch. And then the lion runs away. So the people gather their injured friend and then bring them to a clinic or a hospital or something, and then they get fixed up. So attacks on livestock are way more common. Usually there's like 20 or 30 cows that are killed in a single year because of lions. Lions kill, of the animals that are killed by predators, lions kill over 90%. So 9 out of 10. So people are really worried about lions for that reason. But as far as attacking people, it's very rare, and it's typically because people are following them and cornering them.
All right, let's grab a question here from YouTube. Mr. West's group is wondering, we talked about a few threats. Obviously the human conflict around cattle. We talked about the trophy hunting. Are there some other threats that lion populations are facing in Africa?
Yeah, so I'd say the biggest for sure is habitat loss. So as development occurs all around Africa, lions are very sensitive to that, much more sensitive than other animals. Because they're the top of the food chain, they're the apex predator, any disruption to that food chain, any disruption to that natural environment, the lions feel it more than most other species. So as human populations grow and expand and areas are taken over and they start with agriculture, so growing crops, or people bring in livestock that outcompete other wild prey of the lions, then lions don't really have many places to go. They don't have many options of things to eat. So if the only thing they can eat is livestock and they go for it, then people get upset and then they kill the lions. So that I would say is the biggest thing. And within populations like the Okavango Delta, it's relatively small, and the connections between the Delta and other protected areas and other places where lions live, those connections are starting to shrink. And so we're trying to understand possible corridors and dispersal routes from lions between our area and others, so that they don't become genetically isolated, where they become inbred because there's the gene pool is so small. So we're worried about that as well over the long term.
All right, I'm going to bring Miss Smith back in and see if she's got another question from her crew.
I have a question myself. My students this year are grade 8, and they are currently choosing what courses to take in high school, which is a big deal. So if they were interested in becoming a zoologist like yourself or working with animals, should they be taking sciences, maths? What would you recommend that they start preparing with?
Yes, great question. Obviously, science is a big part of our work. Studying the behavior, biology, social dynamics, ecology of not only lions, but the entire system is really important. So understanding how the plants and soil contribute to the herbivores that live in that area that the lions prey upon. Understanding the dynamics between the lions and other predators is important too. So obvious, science is obvious, and even things like chemistry can be important for understanding how lions move through their environment. Math is very important, especially for statistics. A lot of our work, you have to do various statistical analyses so that you can determine what your data is telling you. And what things are most important to concentrate your energy on. A lot of our work is social science too. So whether it be psychology or sociology or things like that, it's really helpful to understand how to work with people in order to get things done and protect these animals. So I'd say a variety of those things are going to be really important. Of course, when you're in the field, you also sometimes have to learn a language. Sometimes you have to learn how to fix a vehicle. So there's all sorts of skills that you need to know that you may not actually think will be important when you're in school. And all of a sudden they come back to you later on. I mean, even English and writing for grant proposals and writing scientific papers and articles. So yeah, it's a multidisciplinary career path for sure.
All right, awesome stuff. And I think it's becoming more and more important, right? Science communication and communicating what you're doing to the public and getting them on board can be a huge asset.
Absolutely. I think more and more, like you're saying, for a long time, I think scientists have been thought of as these people that like go into a laboratory, go out into the field, go and do these things, and they want to be left alone. Some of my colleagues that are field biologists chose that career path because maybe they don't play nice with other people, and they just want to be kind of out on their own. And what we're learning now is that everything is so interconnected, and the more people you get involved, the more people you get excited about what you're doing, the better outcome you're going to have. So storytelling and conveying very complicated scientific concepts to normal people who may not be interested at that level or may not understand, all of these different scientific terms you use. You have to come up with creative and engaging ways of getting people involved. Otherwise, these animals aren't going to last very long in the wild.
All right, we'll bring in our crew in Oakville, our grade 7, see if they have another question for us.
Hi, yeah, we're still curious about the social aspect and the Wi-Fi aspect. So one other question we had was how many people in the villages have phones, and how are people without phones notified if there's a lion close by?
Great question. The answer that may be surprising is that everybody has phones. Every single household, there's somebody that has a phone, and not everybody has a smartphone. Some of them have flip phones or Nokia phones or stuff like that. So it's not like they have all the latest technology necessarily, but every single household. And what's surprising about that, if you ever get out to some of these villages, is that people live in homes made of mud and sticks and thatch, and yet they all have phones. Many of them have small solar panels so that they can charge their phone. So they'll buy little scratch tickets for airtime so that they can text their friends or family. And there are cell phone towers partially paid for by the government in each of these villages. Even if there's a village with only like 1,000 people in it, there might be a huge cell phone tower so that people can call and stay in touch with their family members. So with the messages we send, what's interesting about it is that not everybody that has a phone can read. Not everybody that has a phone can read English. So before we started this project, we had a series of workshops where we talked to people and we asked, okay, if we're going to send you these messages, what would be the best message for you so that you can receive it and you can act on it? So some people said, I want a written message with the name of the lion in English. Some people said, I don't speak English very well. I prefer that it was a written message in Setswana, the national language. Some people said that they wanted a verbal message, so a voicemail, so that they could click the button and then they could hear like, okay, the lion is nearby, I'll do something about it. And that could be in English or Setswana. So there's a variety of ways, and it's all programmed into our system so that we don't have to individually select every time somebody wants a message. We say, okay, Mr. Kadizora wants a text message in Setswana. Mr. Karundu wants a voicemail message in English. So all of that's automated and sent out.
All right, good stuff. And that answers Mr. West's class online. We're asking about the language in Botswana. So that answers that question for them. And do you have a little bit of a working kind of grasp of Setswana?
Very little. Yeah, I know some greetings and I know some some small things. Usually people laugh when I try to speak it, which can actually be helpful, because if people laugh and then they relax and they know I'm trying and that kind of thing. What is interesting is that in the different villages, there are different tribes. So in our study area, we work with 4 or 5 different villages, and there's 4 different tribes, and they all have their own dialect. And then there's a national, like, sort of inclusive language called Setswana. And then there's English that most people under 30 speak. So most of those people have gone to school. They learn English in school. Many of them work in lodges or in the tourism industry because it's one of the biggest industries in Botswana. So English is a really good language for them to know. So oftentimes, you can easily get around just speaking English or a little bit of Setswana.
All right, I'm going to give Miss Foster's class one more shot here. We'll take one more question today.
Muted, I think.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. Do lions mark their territory?
Yes, they do. Yeah. So a couple interesting things about that. They advertise their territory by roaring, of course. That vocalization that can carry for up to 5 miles. So they let other lions know that they're present and to stay out. Especially the males do that. They also roar for social contact. So, like, if the pride separates and they call to each other and then they find each other and come back together. They also do scent marking. And so they'll patrol the boundary of their territory and then they'll spray with urine, and that scent will communicate messages to other lions that might be coming through that area, especially things like the sex and the age of the animal. So if it's a lion cub that is urinating, there's going to be different hormones than an adult. There's obviously a difference between a female and a male. If the female is in season and looking to breed, then there's going to be different hormones that are going to attract males. But also older individuals. A male that doesn't hold the territory anymore, that's like 10, 11 years old, he probably has different hormones that he is releasing into his scent marking. So that's going to give a different message to possible intruders that may take a chance when they smell something and they say, well, this guy's a little bit old, I think I can take him. Or this guy is strong and in his prime, and maybe there's 2 or 3 males here. Like, let's go around the outside. I don't want to mess with them. So between the vocal territorial calls and the scent marking, yeah, they do mark.
All right. Well, I want to start off with a huge shout out to our YouTube group. We had a great active group on YouTube today, sending in some great questions. So thank you so much for that. A shout out to our camera classrooms. Thank you for your awesome questions. Our groups in Canada and the US. And Andrew, it's always great to steal a little bit of your time and catch up on what you've been up to. And obviously we wish you the best of luck in the new year and hopefully getting back out into the field.
Yeah, thank you so much. I love sharing about our project with anybody. I know that if I were in a classroom right now, just to get the opportunity to speak to people that are working in the field and like learn a little bit more and maybe thinking one day I could potentially do it. I am definitely a person that made it happen. So it can happen for you too. So always happy to inspire others.
All right. Excellent. Well, thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in today. We hope to see you in the events leading up to the Christmas break. But for now, we are going to sign off. Thanks again, everyone.